Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's conference on integrity pacts and civic engagement. And we have a live stream available on our website at dalna.lv and also on our Facebook account. And that's why I will also try to speak in the microphone so that the people who are watching us can also hear what I'm saying. It's very encouraging to see many faces that are not from the NGO sector when we talk about citizen engagement. So welcome. And today's event, as Harold's already mentioned, marks 4 years of Dalna's involvement in monitoring of EU funds spent by Riga City Traffic. And I would like to begin by thanking all our great partners that have arrived in Riga today to share experience and discuss the past and also the future of civic engagement in monitoring EU funds. And also, I would like to thank all the experts from Latvia that have agreed to participate today. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the inspiration that is awaiting us today. And when we discuss about what can be achieved by engaging citizens in Latvia, and what are the emerging best practices from around Europe in doing so. Our results prove that citizen engagement is a way to increase transparency and also competition and ensure fair competition. And transparency and fair competition is a road to prosperity and a country where we all can live well and with which we can all be proud. And that's what we want to achieve, right? And that's why the aim of today's conference is to foster discussions about what are the most effective ways of engaging society and citizens in the next cohesion period. And in the first part of the conference, we will focus on the public procurement monitoring, but in the second part, we will hear from European Commission and Latvian public officials, and also some of our experts from abroad, about the framework for the next planning period, and we'll hear also some inspirational presentations of how to engage citizens. And this session is intended for us to engage with ideas and suggestions on the models that can be used in the next period so that we can get the maximum added value for Latvia. But first, I will share our lessons learned and conclusions of definitely what has been the most challenging, but in the same time the most rewarding project in the recent history of Dalna, and the most direct experience we have had with corruption. So when we started at the beginning of 2016, we already knew that the project will be challenging, but we were not aware of the phase it will take. So let me quickly take you through the main events during our 4-year period, and I will highlight the achievements and talk about those challenges. So what is an integrity pact? No, nobody volunteers, but we still, after 4 years, we still get this question, especially in Latvian. We haven't come up with a very good translation. We have tried godīguma pakts or uzticības pakts, but the reality is that this integrity pact is an approach and also a signed document which commits to contracting authority and bidders to comply with the best practice and maximum transparency. And here in orange we have Dalna as independent monitors, an NGO that monitors the process and commitments made and fosters transparency of information and results. So we monitor everything, all the procedures implemented by the contracting agency, in our case Riga City Traffic, and all the bidders who also have to sign the Integrity Pact. This was a project, the challenging project that we had to monitor. And you can see the costs of the project. It's neared 100 million euro. Majority of this funding came from EU cohesion funds and some part from Riga City Traffic own budget. And we don't have so many of these high-level projects, and I can understand why the managing authority, Ministry of Finance, had a feeling that they need another monitor for this project. This was the first project that Riga City Traffic implemented that was funded from EU money. And there were many local communities involved that actually played out in later stages regarding the Great Cemetery that was there, regarding the other areas where the Skanste tram, or Riga tram as we call it in English, would have gone through. And by saying that it was a complicated project, I mean firstly, no tram manufacturers operate in Latvia, and secondly, the last time when the tram line was constructed was in 1984. So, and in the same time, we knew that Riga City Traffic had been involved in several potential corruption risk scandals, and this also played out in the end of 2018. When the joint investigation with Polish authorities led to a high-profile bribery case concerning another of the company's projects, and this resulted in arrests that you are all familiar with, resignation of Riga's deputy major, and together with a major standing and being elected for the EU Parliament. So the goal of our activities as independent monitor was to increase transparency of the project implementation, the accountability of contracting agency and the bidders, to also involve citizens, and in general to prevent corruption risks, to ensure that this money is spent most effectively for us as a society. So we started by completing our monitoring team. It was a team in Dalna, but we also made open tenders for our legal experts, which was Cobalt legal advice, and also for construction and engineering advisors. And we signed a contract with CMB Limited. And then the process went on to negotiating contract with Riga City Traffic. Actually, the two most important contracts were between Riga City Traffic and the Central Finance and Contracting Agency, and then the contract between us and Riga City Traffic. That was a contract that was original Integrity Pact that had to also be signed between every bidder and the contracting agency. And then this took some time, and when we concluded this stage, the monitoring process started. And of course, we assessed all the documents, but also exchanged information with the authorities that gave them a glimpse and a clear picture of what was going on in Riga City Traffic behind the closed doors. And actually, it was the first time when we got this insight into the dark and dirty place, and we shed some light of the decisions and procedures that were the everyday practice in Riga City Traffic. Important part was also communication and advocacy. We published monitoring reports and highlighted the risks. And based on these conclusions and our insights, we also developed recommendations, and we're still working on some of the recommendations. And what was at the beginning intended to be citizen engagement in the monitoring of construction process, now when the project was cancelled in spring 2019 led for us to work on transfer of knowledge to other civil society groups and activists in Latvia, and also to public officials and organizations also outside of Latvia. Here you can see the 4-year period. And at the beginning, I want to thank actually the team, the monitoring team in Dalna that stayed for the whole period when the project was active, and really put an effort to these activities. And there were 3 important turning points in the timeline that I would like to highlight. First of course, is the signature of IP by the central authority. It took us 11 months to get this contract signed, but the contract was very comprehensive and gave us access to all the documents, all the meetings. And the second important point, of course, was in December 2018, when CNAB announced that they are investigating Riga city traffic, and they arrested several people also from the procurement committee. And in the end, there was new process of a new board members in Riga city traffic, a new procurement committee. The procurements were terminated. And at that point, we also stepped outside of our duties as independent monitors, and we actually approached also the new board of Riga city traffic with our recommendations from our previous monitoring experience on what we saw needs to change in order to actually implement this project and succeed. At the same time, we also approached the mayor of Riga, at that time Nils Ušakovs, and asked them to give us some clarifications why he appointed the board members, which he did, which some of them were also board members during the time about which CNAB carried out their investigations at that time. So there were a lot of changes, but in reality very little changed in terms of how these procurement documents were pushed further. It is very disappointing that Riga city traffic failed to improve its operational integrity, and consequently the project was cancelled in May 2019. But they not only failed to deliver the new tramline for our city, but the taxpayers will also have to cover nearly €500,000 already spent on the project. These are the 4 procurements and the timelines that we monitored, and I don't want to go into little details, but there are some interesting facts, of course, that I can highlight. For example, in the first tender, the procurement documents were available only by physically traveling to Riga city traffic, their office in the outskirts of Riga, and only in specific times. Due to our concerns that we raised with Public Procurement Office, this procurement was terminated in January 2017, and there was a new procurement announced. The second tender on the procurement of trams, we identified restrictive specifications or criteria several times, but unfortunately Riga city traffic didn't take them into consideration. We also published a monitoring report after the procurement committee changed, identifying all the risks, but this was not taken into consideration. Here you can see a little glimpse into our work, how the procurement documents looked, what comments we and our advisors made. This is like we calculated, we reviewed a little bit over than 5,000 pages during this period. We really focused our activities on monitoring because we knew that the risks are high, but we also did other activities. And one of such activities was, of course, knowledge transfer. We organized a summer school for regional activists. Regional seminars are about to take place later in March. I said that this event marks an end to the project. However, there will be some more activities in March, and it might be interesting for those of you from municipalities, public officials, and also NGOs. We focus in the summer school, we focus on public procurement monitoring, also on how we can use open data to monitor procurement and institutions and also decision-making process. We have done some advocacy along the way, and we'll continue this. And what we will continue in March is to also present documentation for municipalities, like a procurement standard for them that they can use to make procurements more effective. So the main achievements that I want to highlight, I already mentioned that this was the first time when institutions could get a glimpse of what's going on in Riga city traffic. This process was dark gray or very dark, and they were not so familiar with evidence-based arguments. But we ensured that controlling institutions were aware and could act against the narrowing of procurement requirements. And our monitoring reports highlighted poor management and other irregularities within the project. And we believe that this prevented violations of competition and procurement rules. We were able to early detect and amend apparent restrictive specifications that would have significantly limited competition in, for example, in the 2017 tenders that was stopped and reannounced. And when Riga city traffic failed to react to our concerns, we brought our reports to the law enforcement and to regulatory authorities. And since 2016, we have made multiple submissions detailing potential corruption risks and violation of competition rules. And as I said at the beginning, this is not an isolated case, this mismanagement of this project. There are ongoing investigations against high-level company officials, and I can only hope that they will ensure that all involved are held accountable, and that there are systemic changes that are implemented within Riga city traffic. And I think that our involvement generally helped to raise awareness of the project in society, and this helped all involved in institutions. Liene Gatere and no representatives of Ministry of Finance will be speaking here today, but they have commented on our involvement and our cooperation, and she highlighted our work on assessing technical specifications and also providing significant information. Also, Public Procurement Office was an institution with which we cooperated very closely. And Dace Gaile, director of the office, has expressed her opinion that perhaps integrity pacts could be especially important and useful for municipal procurements. That municipal citizen groups or organizations could be involved in the monitoring. But of course, we had cooperation with all the institutions, and also Central Finance Contracting Agency will speak later today. What were the main challenges? The main challenge is Latvia is a small country, so for us and as I mentioned, we don't have any trams, were not built in Latvia for a long period of time. So it was challenging finding independent external experts with relevant experience. We had language barriers if we wanted to attract foreign experts, but we have concluded that this is something what we should be doing in the future if we engage in such activities. There was a clear lack of public support for Riga tram project, and this impacted also our activities to a large extent because the project was not sufficiently discussed with public in earlier stages. And there was misinformation about the role of DELNA. Some of this was, in my opinion, active and specific activities done by certain groups, but we had a very hard time to actually explain that the funding was totally independent, the most independent it could be. It came from European Commission and not from Riga Traffic. And then we had some people that clearly expressed their disappointment with our activities, and by saying officials, I mean Ivars Lembergs here. He made a press conference on his YouTube channel and said that DELNA are just a bunch of young people that don't understand anything about public procurement, and why are we wasting taxpayers' money on that? Yes, the traditions in the Riga city traffic, as I mentioned, it was not an isolated case, and this was our daily reality. And moving to the conclusions of my presentation, I want to highlight some of our ideas for the next steps or what can we do in future in Latvia. So we see that there is interest also from municipalities, but from municipalities that are transparent and well governed, and one of them will be speaking in the second session of today's conference. But we see, based on our experience, that it would be most important if we could implement integrity pacts in high-risk projects in municipalities that lack transparency and that are not so good, well governed. There are several models how to implement integrity pacts. It could be maybe by some money devoted to such activities from central government, from ministries or from state chancellery. It could be municipalities, maybe involvement of the bidders by some small fee, but we would really like to stress that it's important to look for a model that would ensure the highest independence of the monitor, and also that would ensure society that this model and this oversight is really an independent monitor. And thirdly, it is citizens have the right to participate in monitoring, but they also need to be enabled to participate, and it's our duty to build capacity of civil society so that they can engage, and also to build their capacity to use open data and to open more data. Also in Latvia, we are champions in procurement data, and I'm very proud that our initiative that we made together with Transparency International Estonia, the Justice Ministry of Estonia, and that data school in Latvia has passed a very high-level competition with International Monetary Fund, their anti-corruption challenge, and among 120 competitors, our initiative is among the top 8. So we will be going to the boot camp later this spring, and this initiative is something that might be interesting for you. We will identify conflict of interest in public procurement in Latvia and Estonia. So it's a cross-border tool. But going back to the presentation, I think that these integrity pacts are a great way to make Latvia and our large, big projects more transparent. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the process or some of the challenges or conclusions. But now I will give floor to the next speaker. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Liene.